How would you like $150,000 towards a down payment on a home? But not for you. For people who just got here. Let's talk about it on Azimuth Podcast. I'm Kimberly McNabb, and with me is Barrett McNabb. Per New York Post, California legislature has passed a bill that would make the Golden State the first in the nation to offer down payment assistance to illegal immigrant homebuyers for up to $150,000 via a state taxpayer-funded home loan program.
That just sounds wrong to me. That sounds wrong. I mean, that's way more than the down payment was for our house.
Well, we're not in California either.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But still, that just seems like it's wrong.
Well, per National Review, eligible prospective home buyers are selected for vouchers via a random lottery. So the rest of us have to sign a stack of paper that's tall enough to be my booster seat, but they just have to sign up for a lottery? I mean, really?
Well, you know, this just goes again to show that there is this. I understand when you talk about great replacement theory, most people, we've talked about this on the podcast, that a lot of people are fear-mongering, saying this is a replacement of white people with black and brown people, and really it's not that. The people that latch onto that as a dog whistle, I think it's disingenuous. It really goes to show what the federal government and what liberal state governments are doing in order to increase illegal immigration into our nation by offering programs like this.
They're replacing Americans, brown, white, black, alike.
I mean, so just to be clear, this is, illegal immigrants are being able to put in for this lottery ahead of African American Californians, ahead of Latino Californians, ahead of Asian Californians, to help out this pouring into our nation of illegal immigrants.
Yeah. Well, the California Dream Program requires first-time homebuyers to meet the Federal National Mortgage Association standards, including having either a valid Social Security number or an individual taxpayer identification number. The bill appears to be targeted at so-called dreamers, meaning illegal immigrants who were brought to the United States as children and who are in the county with deferred action or childhood arrival status. But I'm sure it's going to extend beyond that. But the problem is people don't read bills, right? I mean, come on, when was the last time we read a whole bill? I mean, sometimes these things read thousands of pages. But they'll just read the headlines, and it's further incentive on top of the free food, the free hotels, the free education, free medical care, free trans surgeries in California, that it'll just further incentivize them to come. But, one thing that I took away from this that maybe other people didn't is it passed both parts of the state government. Now it's waiting for Governor Newsom to sign it. And, at first thought, you're like, well, he's a left-wing leftist. Of course he's going to sign it. But I'm thinking, well, we were thinking, a year ago, we're like, oh, well, Biden is so, mentally declined that maybe they could replace him with Gavin Newsom. Maybe they could replace him with Michelle Obama. No one really considered Harris to be a serious contender for that spot. So if Newsom is really going to vie for a federal position one day, I think it would hurt his chances if he took such a left-wing stance on this.
I think you have a point there, because when you look at what Newsom does, and really when you look at what any liberal does, they are progressive and they go full throttle with all of their pet projects until it starts to come up near Election Day. And then, just like clockwork, they start slowing down. They ratchet it back because people are paying attention to what they're doing. So, for example, there was this
Harris backpedaling on all the left-wing stuff. No
exactly.
EV mandates. No, I love fracking.
Yeah, and no, we need to make sure that we have a bipartisan border bill that stops illegal immigrants. Man, this kind of stuff could have been done with the Harris Biden administration executive action, an executive order situation where they immediately tore up all of Trump's executive orders and executive actions and just let this pour through. So, if it's true and the liberals are allowing illegal immigrants into the country, which they are, and there are California sanctuaries that liberal mayors and a liberal governor are having, I think you have a great point that he may want to ratchet that back and say, well, look, we passed this awesome thing, so we get to talk about it, but I'll veto at the last second. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're going to do what they think they can get away with.
Sure.
So if he thinks he can get away with it, I think he'll sign it. If he thinks it'll hurt him in future elections, I don't think he'll.
Well, so
sign it.
this is
I think he wants to.
Yeah, well, I mean, this just goes, and this is not what this segment's about or this video is about, but just recently, Governor Newsom over the past few years passed legislation that established a committee to study reparations for past slavery, and the recommendation was to give this insane amount of money that nobody could afford in any way, shape, or form. So there were two bills that had passed, both the upper and lower house in California, and they were going to be headed to Newsom's desk. And there was this feeling that Newsom was going to veto it. Now, he got the street cred for making the committee, but when they came back with this eye-popping amount of money for reparations for a state that never had slavery, I mean, just to be clear, yeah. there was discrimination, but this is talking about giving people $1 million, every black person $1 million and up. Some I think figures were like $7 million, and it was just crazy. So anyway, he did approve the commission and the committee, but and they came up with their proposals, so he got the street cred for that. But then when they came back with this insane amount and these bills that were sponsored by African American state legislatures, they are rescinded them. They kept them in committee, didn't push them forward to Governor Newsom, and I think it's because Governor Newsom, this being so close to an election, that would have been the news cycle, and so he wasn't going to approve them, and so there were a lot of protests in Sacramento. Just over this past week, with people that were in favor of reparations, were really just clogging up the Capitol. So it's to your point. I think you've hit the nail right on the head. Something that is going to be so controversial is going to get pulled back because we're November 5th is coming up fast.
Yeah, I mean, so it's going to be political calculus. I think he wants to, but yeah, just whatever he can get away with. I did hear a funny joke by Adam Carolla.
Okay.
He goes, well, so what if it's $150,000? You can't buy a cardboard box to live in off $150,000 in California. That is so true. When we lived in Monterey, California, we had a 900 square foot apartment.
Right.
And it was built in 1960. The circuitry in that place was so bad. I could never vacuum. I could never blow dry my hair.
No air conditioner.
Yeah. $2,500 a month in 2010.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's just how ridiculous the housing in California is. But, if you really want to address affordability in housing, you need to cut regulation, not give money away in the form of a direct check or credit. Because I was listening to Carol Roth, and she wrote the book, You Will Own Nothing.
Okay.
And she says that of the cost of a new home, on average, $100,000 can be attributed to regulations.
And that makes a lot of sense because, I know that I forget what year it is. I'd have to go back, and so I'm not going to say a particular year, but let's just say what's within the past 10 years, California has mandated that all housing, new housing, be wired with solar. right?
Yeah,
So
which makes it way more expensive.
Way more
I'm sure
expensive.
California is way on the higher end of those averages.
oh, I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. But to go back to Adam Carolla's point about you can't get a cardboard box for 150,000, you know, where is this money going to be targeted? Again, it's targeted to illegal immigrants, and I don't know the demographics or the population of how many illegal immigrants are in LA and San Francisco, where that would get you a couple of blades of grass, right, for 150. But areas like Salinas, where there is a heavy migrant, farm worker population that are, picking, all kinds of artichokes and citrus and things like that. And, Gilroy, you have all the garlic and things like that. So, I would say that those areas, the housing prices are probably less expensive than in LA and San Francisco. So this would incentivize people to head towards those areas where they could get migrant farm worker jobs and then get housing there.
Well, that's definitely a possibility. Now, I heard an interesting theory about this, and the theory is, well, it's a lottery system, so they
Yep.
don't have to fill it. There's fewer loopholes like than the rest of us. And if they don't have to put any of their own money down, the government just gives them the down payment. I mean, we've seen similar things like with the 2009 bubble burst,
Sure,
right?
right.
Because there were all these loans that people didn't really qualify for under
Right.
normal circumstances, and then all these people foreclosed on their houses. So the theory is these people are not going to be able to pay these, quote, loans, and then the bank will own them. BlackRock will own all these homes.
Right. But they would have gotten a valuation out of it of $150,000, for this supposed down payment, and so they basically make money on this deal. I mean, that would be crazy to be able to foreclose and then already have $150,000 sunk equity into it, and then you've got this. Let's just say that the average home in California would be somewhere in the near 2 million range. Because I've seen YouTube videos of people building houses all over the place, and they're showing it. So if you average what a 3-bedroom home in LA or San Francisco would be, and then average it with what a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom home in Salinas would be, if you average all that out, you're still going to be probably looking at least $1 million, maybe two. And so they're going to grab this loan or the house on the cheap, and that makes complete financial sense to them because is it going to be for existing homes, or is it going to be in conjunction with a California state mandate of building affordable homes? You have a lot of companies in Nevada that are building these small homes, these teeny homes, and so with them selling those particular homes for $150,000, if you grabbed a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom teeny home that has a loft or something like that, then all of a sudden you're paying for that thing in full.
Right. Well, there's so many regulations.
At taxpayer expense.
Yeah, there's such a housing shortage in California, and there's so many regulations. It makes it nearly impossible to build a new home. So,
Right.
I mean, people would have to do something.
So these are like boxable. These are prefabbed homes, and I don't know. Again, we'd have to read the bill in order to find out what's in it, right?
Yeah.
Famous Nancy Pelosi quote for the Affordable Care Act, but we have to pass it before we know what's in it.
Oh, geez.
But would there possibly be a carve out for these prefab and manufactured homes that you're just buying it either in state or out of state and just transporting it in?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure they'd try to stop that somehow. I don't know. But, the state's job, I wish the government would stick with what they're supposed to do.
It'd be nice.
Right? Yeah. So they're getting into things they shouldn't be getting into and not doing their job in things that they are supposed to be doing. The government's job is to protect us from threats, foreign and domestic.
Right.
And not only are they not arresting illegals, they're freaking incentivizing. So they're doing the opposite of their jobs. I mean, they're getting into stuff that's not theirs, like getting into the schools and trying to trans the kids and teach the kids this transgender ideology and not protecting us. Like, focus on your job.
Yeah, that's a the big difference between the Democrat Party and the Republican Party is when you look at all the stuff that the ankle biters are abortion, trans rights. Those are dog whistles to keep you.
They don't
keep
affect
you
everyday life.
They don't affect everything. So the big stuff, conservatives and Republicans are for a small federal government and more states' rights, and the liberal side is big government and big federal government, right? And so the problem when you start looking at all this stuff is it comes down to resources. What are we willing to spend our resources on? Because they're a finite amount. There's a finite amount of resources, and so my mother always said, "Do the things you have to do before you do the things you want to do." So there is a lack of affordable homes, a housing crisis, if you will, in the United States, and I would strongly say that in order of precedence that you need to be looking at is taking care of Americans first, U.S. citizens first. Whether that is, giving housing to elderly Americans, to veterans, especially making sure U.S. citizen children are housed way above and get homeless down for our citizens.
Yeah, I believe there are 1 million homeless people in California.
But I don't know what the breakdown of who classifies as homeless when it comes down to legal U.S. citizens or illegal immigrants, right? So I don't know, but that needs to be found out via either a census or something like that. But I would say that as soon as we take care of U.S. citizens first, then we look and see what the resources are for other people. But that's the biggest thing is looking at taxes that are taken from us to have illegal immigrants come in and get Medicare and to get Social Security when they haven't paid in. I mean, ultimately what that's going to do is it's going to take money away from people who have paid in, and it's going to give them a shortfall in their Social Security checks.
Yeah, well, it seems like the more the government gets involved in stuff, I mean, the worse things get because they focus on the wrong things. They don't prioritize us. They spend all of our resources on people who haven't paid in to the point where we're just going to collapse. And so, you know what? As far as I'm concerned, the government should just shut up, go the way of President Biden, go to Rehoboth Beach and on a permanent basis.
Right. Yep. And in retirement, and he can just sit there and watch the waves come in and out. But we saw this, and we were, this is the kind of thing that we need to be talking about because this is your taxpayer dollars. I don't care who you are, you're paying into the system, whether you get a refund or not, but you still pay some sort of taxes. And to have your tax dollars be misused to the benefit of somebody else that's in the country illegally, we really
you can't afford a home.
Exactly. We really wanted to bring this to your attention. So thank you for tuning in to Azimuth Podcast, and please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in. Those who control the language control the narrative. Let's talk about why words matter on Azimuth Podcast. I'm Kimberly McNabb, and with me is Barrett McNabb. So, the language we use matters. Vermont Department of Health put up a Facebook post. Many families and students are getting ready for the new school year. Equity in the classroom is an essential piece of productive and healthy learning environment. When talking about family, it is important to use terms that cover the many versions of what a family can look like. Use child or kid instead of daughter or son.
Yeah, I have some heartburn on this, honestly. There's this smothering effect that I feel that government involvement in language manipulation has. I mean, we keep changing the dictionary on what different words mean and what words are fair and not fair and things like that. But when I saw this Facebook post on the daughter or son, I really, why did you waste the amount of money that you spent to create this graphic and to create posters and rules and regulations for the school system to do this? This just seems like a monumental waste of resources.
Yeah, and the last thing I want them used for is the government to be involved in yet another thing they have no business being involved in. I mean, it's the Department of Health. Like, there are other Facebook posts involving, like, put on bug spray because diseases carried by mosquitoes can cause encephalitis. That's relevant.
That is relevant.
But, this not relevant to the Department of Health.
Well, I mean, let's go back to this first bullet. Use child or kid. Okay, that's interchangeable, but instead of daughter or son, what if I want to be specific and talk about something, that an activity that they're in, or I want to, let's just say that I have, one of each and they're in different grades, and I want to differentiate between the grade. My son is in second grade and my daughter is in kindergarten, instead of my child is in second grade and my child is in kindergarten.
Right.
My other child.
Right. Well, also, if my mother were to refer to me as my kid and dropping me off, there was probably an argument in the car on the way over.
Right.
It sounds a little more aloof.
Well, this is just it's pushed on you, and kids aren't thinking of things like this. I mean,
they're not thinking about their gender terms or whatever. It's a suggestion by adults.
Daddy, I would really prefer you not call me your son. I'd really prefer you call me your kid or your child. Said no child ever. I mean, really.
Yeah. So, one thing that leftists love to say is they want conservatives out of their bedroom. Well, guess what? We want leftists out of our schools. We want leftists out of our kids' heads. Right. How about that?
Yeah. I mean, again, this is the government, and they're choosing which words are important, and they're ranking them. If you look at any of the new words that are added to the Oxford Dictionary or the Cambridge Dictionary or Webster's Dictionary and things like that, a lot of progressive terms are being continuously added. Now, some of them are just made up gibberish words that are going into pop culture, and then they get added to the dictionary.
Well, like the word woke. The first time I heard it, I'm like, that's not really a tense.
Right.
But, the left party, for a party that loves to play identity politics, why are you trying to gender neutral everybody? Because someone's gender, really, we mean sex. Someone's sex is a part of their identity. So why are you trying to remove it?
Right. Now, what's the second bullet here? I think it says, say, family members
rather than household members, because they're trying to include family that doesn't necessarily live in the household, which I don't really care about.
Yeah, I mean, when I
why
look
bother
at this,
mentioning it? Who cares?
Exactly. I mean, family members, household members, honestly,
whose feelings are hurt by that?
Well, honestly, I've never heard somebody say my household members. So
yeah,
this
really.
is a reinforcement of something that I don't really think exists. I don't think it's identifying a problem that doesn't exist. There's
well,
no problem.
Leftists love to do that.
I say my family members. So, but the graphic, you can see it's posted. It says say family members instead of household members.
Or family rather than extended family. I'm like, okay. I'm from the South, so if I were to say extended family, that's like third cousin.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of when I saw this.
And who's offended by that? It's like, I barely know you. Who cares?
That's kind of the point I would make as well. Is of the three bullets, the only one that is controversial in my opinion is the first bullet, but the other two are weird.
Yeah, it's like, why are you making this?
The left is weird in doing this. I mean, so I would always say my family members, than household members, and I would always say my family. In fact, I have probably never said my extended family.
Yeah,
for anything before.
That's just weird. But the Department of Health needs to stick with their job. Stick in your lane. Do the encephalitis stuff. School should just do education. Where I don't want to be inclusive is at the bottom of the world education tier. I want to be included in the world's top tier education system. And so
well, that's absolutely. I mean, when you look at what you spend your resources on, and a lot of times people credit this with illegal immigration. What are we spending our nation's resources on? Citizens versus non-citizens and things like that. But let's just talk about time, right? Let's just talk about spending time on something. And this is a waste of time to create a graphic where there's not a problem. I think you would just call this a nothing burger. But it was important enough for Vermont to do this, and so I would rather spend that time learning reading and writing and arithmetic and getting our test scores up. I mean, if you look at around the country, there people are touting that 29%, let's just round that to 30%, people are at or reading at their grade level or reading. I like to look at it the opposite way. That means 70% or 71% people can't read. That is a more shocking.
80.
Yeah, well, that's a more shocking statistic. If you talk about who can't do it versus who can, you have to make people do the mental gymnastics to figure out who can't do it, and so just by leading with the shocking amount of people that are at, or actually that are way below their grade level, is problematic.
And before you recommend doing certain things, changing things to make it progressive, maybe look at places that aren't doing it. And, okay, are they performing better or worse than we are? Oh, they're performing better, but they're not doing that crap that you're suggesting. So maybe don't do the progressive stuff. But, silly, senseless stuff just make the adults seem silly and useless, and you lose credibility. You lose authority. And on top of that, teachers don't have the authority to discipline their kids in any way, shape, or form. And I'm not talking about taking a 2x4 and slapping the kid on the wrist every time they don't do their work. But if they can't even, they don't even seem to have the authority to send them to timeout or send them to the principal's office for being disruptive. So you remove the authority to discipline. You make their language super silly. They're not going to do the work. The teacher is going to say, okay, class, let's turn to page 76. And if the kids don't, every single kid in the class doesn't feel like doing it, then they're not going to do it, and it's going to be a chaos. And guess what? That's what the left wants.
Right. I mean, and plus you see all these videos. We're not going to show any, but you can just do the research yourself. All these videos of teachers that are pulling cell phones away from people, while they're trying to teach class, and the students are beating up the teachers. I mean, so this is where you have that lack of discipline. There was a guy playing a Nintendo Switch, and a teacher grabbed it.
Who on earth lets their kid
take
a Nintendo to school? It starts with the parents.
Yeah, absolutely. So we saw this inclusive language for families post by Vermont, and that is just a waste of time and a waste of resources, because a graphic designer, has had to come up with it
and make themselves important.
But still, just makes them look silly. And we saw this, and we wanted to bring it to you. So thank you so much for tuning into Azimuth Podcast. Please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.
He Said, She Said for Gold Star families at Arlington National Cemetery. Let's talk about it on Azimuth Podcast. I'm Barrett McNabb, and with me is Kimberly McNabb. So last week, August 26th, President Trump was invited by Gold Star families to remember and have a memorial ceremony for the 13 service members that were killed in the extraction from Afghanistan 3 years ago. And so we're going to play a quick clip just to kind of give you some context of what this is going on.
All right, let me ask you about another one of the big headlines this week, Donald Trump's visit to Arlington National Cemetery. You've been talking about this. He attended a wreath-laying ceremony, obviously, for the 13 service members who were killed during the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. He was invited by those family members, important to say that. He also had campaign staffers with him. Photos, videos were posted on a campaign site. Taking campaign photos and videos at grave sites is forbidden under federal law. You, of course, served at Arlington Cemetery in the Old Guard, so I know that this is a sacred place for you. Bottom line, though, I guess, Senator, is it ever appropriate to make campaign content at military grave sites?
He didn't take campaign photos there. These families, Gold Star families, whose children died because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's incompetence, invited him to the cemetery, and they asked him to take those photos because, as they told me yesterday when I spoke to Kelly Barnett and Darren Hoover, the parents of Taylor Hoover, who has Arkansas ties, they don't get to go to the beach on Labor Day. They don't get to have barbecues. This is their one chance to have a memory of their children, to commemorate their service and to honor their sacrifice. They wanted President Trump there. They wanted to take those photos. You know who the families also invited? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Where were they? Joe Biden was sitting at a beach. Kamala Harris was sitting at her mansion in Washington, D.C. She was 4 miles away. 10 minutes. She could have gone to the cemetery and honored the sacrifice of those young men and women. But she hasn't. She never has spoken to them or taken a meeting with them.
Well, they did meet with them during the dignified transfer.
Because of
they were with them at the dignified transfer.
Her and Joe Biden's incompetence, those 13 Americans were killed in Afghanistan.
Okay, so we have to caveat this with she lied right there. The news anchor for NBC lied. Kamala Harris was not present at the dignified transfer ceremony when the fallen service members came to Dover and came off the airplane. And this is the famous part where the famous or infamous photograph where Joe Biden was checking his watch. Did it twice, but checking his watch, which was hugely disrespectful to the Gold Star families and to the service members that were coming off the plane. But the NBC had to recant that lie that the anchor told, and they did it via a tweet. And
instead of going on the air, which is the medium she lied on.
Exactly. So instead of having her come on and say, I was wrong, Kamala Harris was not at the dignified transfer ceremony, and so leaving at that note, it was a tweet not even sent out by her, but it was by NBC saying, oh, we got that wrong. But the thing is there were obviously millions of people saw that
and probably
show.
didn't follow up
and didn't follow up, and so well she was there. So this is, I find this ironic. So Kamala Harris sent out a tweet. We're not going to read the whole thing because it's so long, but she goes to say, as vice president, I've had the privilege of visiting Arlington National Cemetery several times. It's a solemn place and a place where we come together to honor American heroes, but not that day.
Right.
She didn't go that day. Because she's hugely responsible as the Harris-Biden administration's debacle of the Afghan withdrawal. She didn't want to face the music and face those hard questions by those Gold Star families. She was invited, and obviously Senator Cotton's talking about she was in her mansion. That's the Naval Observatory where the vice president resides in Washington, D.C., and was 4 miles away. Could have easily been there, very quickly and been enacted presidential. but she
and
failed.
And she could have gotten similar shots as Trump.
Well, we're gonna talk about the shots as well because there were a number of controversies that came about. So we're gonna watch this this next clip with a Gold Star mother-in-law of one of the service members that was killed, and this is on CNN.
Monday was the third anniversary of the 13 U.S. military service members who were killed in Afghanistan at Kabul Airport's Abbey Gate. That was August 26, 2021. 3 of the 13 are buried at the Arlington National Cemetery. Former President Donald Trump visited the cemetery following a wreath-laying ceremony to honor those who lost their lives that day. He did so at the invitation of the families. A video of the visit posted by the Trump campaign on TikTok showed the former president walking through Arlington and visiting grave sites. It's a violation of federal law to use cemetery footage for campaign purposes. Prior to Trump's visit to Section 60, that's an area in the cemetery largely reserved for the graves of those who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, campaign officials were made aware of federal laws which prohibit political campaign or election-related activities. They were asked not to take photos or videos for that purpose. The grounds are considered sacred and hallowed. An Army spokesperson said an employee who attempted to ensure adherence to these rules was, quote, abruptly pushed aside.
Now, I want to talk about this. So this is, to me, one of the there's two controversies, whether or not Trump used footage for campaign purposes or intended to use the footage for campaign purposes, and then also when a Arlington National Cemetery employee went to intervene and remind the campaign that you weren't allowed to take photos for campaign purposes and was pushed away. Okay, so that's assault. So let's go ahead and watch this a little bit more because we're going to see the Army statement.
The statement goes on to say, consistent with the decorum expected at ANC, this employee acted with professionalism and avoided further disruption. The incident was reported to the police department, but the employee subsequently decided not to press charges. Therefore, the Army considers this matter closed.
So that's the statement from the United States Army. This is unusual, and the news media have kind of capitalized on this. The Department of Defense and the U.S. Army typically do not issue statements of this type. But I have a huge problem with this because the Gold Star mother that we're about to hear is talking about that there was no altercation. And so in this instance, then that means somebody is lying. And I feel that this is important because if there was an assault committed, then the Arlington National Cemetery employee, it's a DOD employee, should have pressed charges. But the fact that they, called the police but then declined to press charges, to me leaves just this stink in the air of crying wolf and throwing the smoke bomb and then saying, oh, never mind, nothing to see here. This just goes to show, in my opinion, that this probably did not occur. And there is supposedly footage from the Trump administration that we're going to hear about in a second that said this didn't occur, and we have footage to prove it. He hasn't released that yet. But to have the Gold Star mothers go and say, look, there was no physical altercation. So let's keep going.
Since Monday, accounts from the scene have varied. Former President Trump has insisted there was no violation of law. Communications director for the Trump campaign, Stephen Chung, posted on X that the campaign was granted access to have a photographer there. Chung also disputed claims of a physical altercation and has said there's video to back this up, yet none has been released thus far. Former President Trump published a statement on Truth Social from 5 family members thanking him for making the visit and saying, "We are deeply grateful to the president for taking the time to honor our children and for standing alongside us in our grief, offering his unwavering support during such a difficult time." Joining me now is one of those family members, Christy Shamblin, mother-in-law of Marine Corps Sergeant Nicole G. G, aged 23, was deployed to Afghanistan where she served as a female engagement team member to help facilitate evacuation support for Afghan women and children. She was killed in a suicide attack along with 12 other service members that day, leaving behind a husband. Christy, thank you so much for being here. Please tell me about Nicole.
Oh, thank you for having me. Nicole was a ray of light. She was an encourager. She believed in having a positive mental attitude, and she was so very proud to be serving on with the FET team in Afghanistan. She was very, very proud to serve there, and they all worked so hard to get the most vulnerable out of that country before, certain death. And we're very proud of her. And we want to continue on her legacy and being encouraging and having a positive mental attitude.
I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm trying to understand what exactly went on Monday. You wanted the former president there. By the way, I think it's a wonderful thing that he was there, reflective and honoring our war dead. But it crossed a line at some point. How do you see it?
Well, first, I want to remind everybody that it's really hard to find a way on August 26th to celebrate, and we want to celebrate our heroes. We invited both President Trump and the Biden-Harris administration, and we didn't hear back from the White House. We were happy to welcome President Trump to lay wreaths with all three of our families and our wounded, some of our wounded from that day. And when he came to Section 60, it was at our request to spend time with our loved ones. There was not a press presence there. We privately took pictures among ourselves. And it was, a more celebratory feeling for that day because, we want to celebrate our loved ones, and it's very hard to find ways to do that. At a cemetery, but they were very respectful. We didn't see any altercation, and really we just want our loved ones to be honored and remembered in a positive way.
Yeah, so again, the two big things, whether or not there was an assault that happened and got pushed out of the way, this woman says that didn't happen, right? Mm-hmm. Consequently, the employee who first identified the assault and called the police later recanted, meaning they decided not to press charges. If somebody assaulted me, why would you not press charges? I think that the hand was caught in the cookie jar, and there were enough people there that said, no, there was no altercation. Okay, so I have heartburn with this because what it did, the second and third order effects, is it caused the United States Army to issue a statement, which is very rare for them to do. And that's important because it makes the news cycle, and it leaves this odor that the liberals can capitalize on. And again, it's obviously been disproven because if the person was assaulted, they would have pressed charges. They were authorized to have a camera person there. The Gold Star families requested that photographs and video be taken of them. And again, this is important to note. You see the main video of Trump walking down the stairs and playing the wreath at the head of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which is what the Old Guard is protecting. Not only is Arlington National Cemetery a place where our heroes are buried, but it also is a home to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and that tomb is guarded day and night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in inclement weather or in sunshine. And the Old Guard soldiers are well renowned to even when hurricanes happen or blizzards, they always volunteer to continue to do that. So they are great and wonderful Americans. So, but you see the regular video of Trump coming down to lay the wreath. But then it's captured for the TikTok as well. So it looks as though, to me, that the original video is for record. You see President Joe Biden doing the exact same thing that Trump did, laying wreaths on Memorial Day and things like that. And it was later cut and snipped to make TikTok videos and things like, look, this is what I've done. So I would say that it's the initial intent was to have a record for the Gold Star families, and then the footage was used later on for snippets for that Trump put on his campaign. Again, going to the actual, there's 3 of the service members that are buried there from the Abbey Gate of the 13. And so Trump went with the Gold Star families to those particular graves and took photographs and videos at that spot at the request of the Gold Star families. They asked for that, and she even says that they asked for that. But what didn't happen was this giant gaggle of reporters and cinematographers and things like that are coming in and doing a television commercial. Also, there is a lot of famous people that are buried there. President Kennedy is buried there with his eternal flame. There are thousands of graves, and to have Trump walking through with this cinema, music and this production of lighting and shades and things like that, reflectors, and having this magical movie moment going through. That didn't happen.
Right.
And it is just the area and the gravestone where the Gold Star family members requested that they take photographs and video with President Trump.
Yeah, and Kamala Harris's tweet, I mean, that is just so disingenuous to me, because she was invited to President Biden, that both of them were invited. They decided to not show up, which makes, again, even if no pictures were taken, makes Trump look better. But, Kamala Harris cannot answer difficult questions. So if she had shown up, someone might have asked her some hard questions, because, again, she was, quote, the last in the room when the decision about Afghanistan had been made. So, yeah, I just think she didn't want to answer any tough questions. And now she's like, boo-hoo, I didn't get the photo ops.
Right. And I mean, to your point, being the president of the United States is hard. If anybody thinks that it is easy, I'm more than happy to debate you on that. But it is hard because you have to live with your decisions, right? And so
that's why people age so much.
Yeah, I mean, if you, I think the worst one was to show like Obama, like on day 1.
Yeah,
and
he looks
Obama,
like he's 25, and then he looks like he's 45.
On day 8 or 8 years, the end of 8 years, you can definitely see the man's aged. But still, this was an opportunity for Kamala Harris to come out and face the music and potentially
look presidential.
And not because she's filming, but because she's showing up and doing the hard thing.
Doing the work, as they like to say.
Exactly. I mean, showing up and talking to the families. Again, not doing a campaign commercial. Trump didn't do that either. But to show up and be there and participate in laying the wreath and commiserating with the Gold Star families, that is hard. It's hard to do, but that's what she should have done, because leaders do the hard things. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I just wanted to put this to bed. I don't think that there was an assault, because if there was, then the Army would not consider the matter closed. I don't think that there was a violation of federal law, because the Army considers the matter closed. So I think Kamala Harris got a news cycle out of this, and it was refuted by the Gold Star family members that were actually there and present, that said that the photographs were at their request and the video was at their request, and that there was no altercation, and they were there. And so with the person that supposedly was assaulted dropping the charges and the Army saying we consider the matter closed, I have a feeling that this was a big giant nothing burger that Kamala Harris and the liberal media got to run around in circles, but
and cause a bad odor in the air.
Cause that bad odor.
I feel like this is just one of many attempts by the media to cause stink around Trump's name, such as the the suckers and losers comment, which is fake. The Charlottesville find people on both sides, which is fake.
Right.
I mean, just many examples of bad odor leaving a bad taste in people's mouths, and then that reflects on election day. Don't fall for it, people. You're smarter than that.
Yeah, I mean, it just, it's kind of like any courtroom drama. Picket, Law and Order, whatever courtroom drama you're watching.
You're going to make the other side look bad.
Well, I mean, it's always, the attorney will ask a question that is, outrageous, and then let's say withdrawn. Like, you're a killer, aren't you? Withdrawn. Well,
or strike it from the record. The jury still heard it.
Jury still heard it. So in this particular instance, Trump's team assaulted a woman and violated federal law. Withdrawn. And
Right.
the stink is still there.
Yeah, we don't have the Men in Black little flasher thing. You were not here. You don't remember this.
Right. And so again, that's this. It's it's been withdrawn by the Army. It's been withdrawn by the person who supposedly was assaulted. But the stink is still there, and that's really what's unfair in politics, and it was capitalized on by Kamala Harris's team. So we wanted to kind of put that to bed, especially with the words from the horse's mouth of the Gold Star family members about what actually happened. So thank you so much for tuning into Azimuth Podcast. Please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.